Okay, so now we're going to do all the pressing and sewing required before an overlock is needed. So basically I've lined up my interfacing with my cotton and making sure that the kind of bumpy side is facing the fabric, otherwise you'll end up with it sticking to your iron. And then what I'm going to do is press. Now this press that I'm just about to show you is the exact same on the tops of each of the square pockets and on the hems of your top, your sleeve and your trouser. So basically what you want to do is fold it down by 1 centimetre and then fold it down again by 2 centimetres. So you end up with a nice crisp line. Now that's where your notches come in, because it means that you can fold it down by 1 and then match it up with the notches and fold it down again. So I'm going to do that for all the pockets, and I'm going to do it for the hems of all the trousers and the tops as well, and make sure that this is nice fused on as well. The pockets will also, if I just do one just to show you, so if you fold it down, I'll take this one away underneath. So you're going to fold it down by 1 and press along, and then fold it down again by 2 centimetres. Right, and then you're going to stitch along there, and that will be the outside of the pocket that way round. You then want to fold all the rest of them into the inside. So again, using your notches that you've got marked out on the pattern, you're going to go down the side. Now the pockets are the only ones that are 1.5. Everything else on the pattern is going to be sewn to a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So all the way down. That. Same for the other side. And then this bottom side here. Okay, and then once that's flipped, you should end up with nice crisp edges. Top bit that you can do, just fold down, and that then can be top stitched. Once you've done your stitch across here, that then can just be top stitched into the markings that you've laid out on your pattern pieces as your pocket. Okay, so that's me pressed all of my pocket pieces and all of my hems of my top, my trousers and my sleeve. The only thing to look out for when you're pressing your hems is to make sure you're pressing the opposite side. So if you've got a pair like this, that's the 2 back trouser pieces that are the identical match, but make sure that the hems are both on the same side. You're not doing two of the same. Also, anything with a pocket on it, make sure that the hem's going on the opposite side. So where you've marked out your squares of your pockets, for example, this hem is on this side of the fabric, and if I flip that round, you can see that my drawn square is on the opposite side of the fabric, because this is the right side of the fabric and that's the wrong side. Obviously with cotton it's a little bit more difficult to figure out your right and wrong side of your fabrics, so just make sure you're paying attention when you're doing your hems. So yeah, so now we are ready to sew. I've also done my fusible, so that's all attached to my facings now, so we are good to go to the first stage of sewing. Okay, so what I've done is I've lined up everything right side to right side, so that's my top matched up. You can see that the folded down edge that I've done for my hem is facing me, so that's the wrong side that's facing me, so the 2 right sides are together. Same for my sleeves, my back trouser pieces, my front trouser pieces and my pockets that are here. Things notable to look out for in this initial stitch. So we're going to do the shoulder seam up here. We're going to do the side seams down to where this notch is here, because this is where this is going to turn into the vents at the side of the top. Also, when you're sewing down the side seams for for things like the sleeves here, obviously make sure that you're unfolding that pressed line so that the seam's going all the way down. For the trousers, all we're doing is sewing the crotch seam at the moment. So we're sewing around here and sewing around here. And for the pocket, we're starting from the notch here, 1 centimetre all the way around the pockets and coming up to the notch seam just there, just so that we can insert that into the trousers later. And for these pockets here, we're just going to do that top folded edge and stitch along that so that you've got a nice fold finish for the top of the pocket. So we're going to do that just now, and then I'll get back to you with the next set of instructions. Okay, so that's all my initial seams stitched. We're now at the stage where we need to press before we can move on to other ones. I've done it in a contrast thread just so you guys can see which ones I've stitched so far. The only one that needs pressed open at the moment is the side seam, and I'll just show you. The side seam is just so that when we've overlocked these edges, that the vent at the side of the top can be stitched flat. So that's the only one that needs to be pressed open. Everything else, including the shoulder seams, the sleeve patterns, and the trouser crotch seams, can all just be pressed to one side.
Oh, bless you.
The pockets, I've just stitched round the outsides of these pockets and the tops of the square pockets. So I've got 4 sets of squares like that. So I'm just going to give that a wee press at the edge. This doesn't really need press, but the rest of them I'm just going to press all the seams. Okay, so now what I'm doing is the pocket placement. In hindsight, this probably would have been easier specifically for the top if I'd done this before I sewed this up. So live and you learn, probably easier to do this before you sew it up, but the application of how they go on is exactly the same no matter what. I've made the decision to, originally there was a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance around this pocket, and I just feel like that was a wee bit too big, just because of the way that I'm going to stitch this in. I'm going to do an outer stitch around the very edge and then one centimetre in, so that that seam is then captured in those stitch seam allowances. If I'd left it at 1.5, it would have left a really small pocket on the inside, which I want to leave these as big as possible. So really, as you can see here, I've pinned these ones on. All you need to do is you've got your wee markers, your chalk markers on your, that should have been marked onto the fabric. You want to just match your corners up to the corners, and don't stress too much. See if you can see a wee bit of the chalk on either side. I'm going to wash all of the scrubs before we send them to the hospital anyway, so the chalk will come out. So don't stress if you can see a wee bit of the chalk. So basically just match that all up all the way down, match it up at the bottom, and stick a couple of pins in around each side. Once I've done that, I'm going to top stitch these pockets on, 2 lines of stitching, and I'm also going to join the front and the back of the trouser, again right sides together, and I'm going to leave a gap. There's a notch on the front pattern, and I'm going to leave a gap at the side from there to there, and that's where we're going to be inserting these pockets. Okay, so what I've done now is I've sewn on my pockets. So as you can see, I've done one outer line of stitching around the pocket and then one inner line. Because I reduced the amount of seam allowance that was around the edge of these, it means that that's nicely encased, so you won't get any frayed edges inside that pocket now. It's all just inside those stitch lines. I also sewed together my front and back facing, and my side seams of my trousers, leaving the gap between the notched sections for the pocket insertion. I'm now going to move on to overlocking, which is the next stage in all of this, and then we'll get back to the sewing.